Welcome, everyone. We truly appreciate you joining us this morning to learn more about using Google Apps for Education on an iPad. We know that you play an important role in your students' life and learning. So, again, thank you for being with us today. Our goal for this training is to give you some hints to make learning via iPad easier and more fun for your students. During this session, we will get your iPad set up for remote learning, as well as discuss navigation to and within Google Apps for Education and Google Classroom. My name is Amy Moore, and joining us in the live stream chat is my five-star colleague, Lisa Cutshell, along with Chicago Public School Family and Community Engagement Support, Merlene DeSalle. As we go through our presentation, please feel free to add your questions in our live chat if you are on a device that allows you to share. For those of you who are just joining us on a phone or a device with limited response capabilities, we will show other ways for you to have a voice and get the answers you need. CPS students in lower grades may be utilizing iPads for remote learning. This can make navigation easier and learning more interactive for our younger students. Throughout the session, I hope you'll see the user-friendly nature of both the iPad and Google Apps for Education. If you are able to follow along on an iPad during this session, feel free to do so. However, if you would rather watch and take notes, that can be just as helpful. You can always come back to this video to rewatch our presentation in the future. Before we jump into iPad navigation, we should note the similarities between an iPad and an iPhone. If you are familiar at all with an iPhone, many of the things we will discuss today will be familiar to you. If not, that's perfectly okay as well. We will do our best to give you a very basic introduction. Please note, as we discuss navigation of the iPad this morning, we are not referring to the iPad Pro. So if you notice that you have a different version of the iPad than what we are referencing, please reference the link that we will add to the chat. It will tell you more about specific buttons on your iPad. Our first step in utilizing the iPad is to power on the device. With the iPad held vertically in portrait position, the power button is located on the top right edge. Press and hold this button for about 3 seconds, then release. The Apple logo should appear on the screen briefly before all apps load. Pressing and holding this button again can power the device off. A short click with the power button can turn off the display to save battery. A second short click readies the device for use and turns the display back on. Clicking the circular button at the bottom, which is known as the home button, will display the home screen. Clicking this button at any time will return the iPad to its home screen. So if you or your student ever gets lost in an app or while exploring the iPad, click the home button to quickly find your way back to the home screen. After the device is powered on, you will need to connect it to the internet. To do this, select the settings icon on the iPad. That icon is indicated on my screen for you. Also, as shown on my screen, when the settings icon is selected, the settings will open on the iPad. Select the Wi-Fi icon at the left. Ensure that the Wi-Fi switch is toggled to the right so it displays as green. Then select the Wi-Fi network of your choice and enter the password if prompted. For assistance with obtaining internet access, you can use the link we will drop in the chat. After the device is online, students can begin navigating and exploring apps on the iPad. We suggest students and parents, if possible, spend some time exploring the iPad to become more familiar with how it functions. If you are still in the settings or in another app, remember, a single click of the home button will take users to the home screen. Apps are stored on the home screen. Swiping left and right on the home screen may reveal more apps. You will notice CPS has installed some Google apps that your student might be asked to use for remote learning. You can see in this animation that a single click of the home button returns the user from the CPS portal to the home screen. We'll talk more about the portal in just a bit. Double pressing the home button will show users recently opened apps. This can make switching from one app to another so much easier. We'll talk more about this when we explore Google Classroom. The image on my screen shows the grid view of previously opened apps that appears when the home button is clicked twice. Once a user sees the app of their choice, they simply tap to open that app. Again, that's a double press of the home button to see this screen. The dock is a small area of apps at the bottom of the iPad. Apps that have recently been opened will live in the dock. Students can also store frequently used apps in the dock. Clicking and holding on an app will allow the user to move the apps. Once the apps bounce on the screen, they are ready to be moved. Simply drag the app to the dock for quick and easy access. Once the app is in the dock, simply press the home button once to freeze the apps in place. As you can see in the animation on my screen, a long hold on any app makes all the apps bounce. Then the app is dragged to the dock. Finally, the apps stop bouncing once the home button is clicked once. Students can also use this method to rearrange the apps on the home screen itself. You can adjust the volume and brightness of the iPad using the Control Center. To access the Control Center, swipe down from the top right corner. If this does not reveal the Control Center, your student might be using an older iPad. If this is the case, you must swipe up from the bottom of the screen instead. Please note, the Control Center will shift to the appropriate location regardless of the orientation of your iPad. If my iPad were upright in portrait mode, I would still swipe down from the top right corner. Volume keys are also located on the side of the iPad as shown on my screen. An easy way to find apps and other information on an iPad is through the search feature. To use the search feature, swipe down from the middle of your home screen. Be sure not to swipe down from the very top, as this returns the iPad to its lock screen. Again, we're swiping down from the middle of the home screen. As shown on my screen, after you swipe down, you are able to click on the search bar at the top. You will also see recently opened apps. This is another quick way to find an app. In the search bar, you can find apps, search documents, or even ask questions like how many cups are in a gallon. For more information, see the link below and in the chat. If you find you need more assistance in exploring your iPad, we will provide you with even more resources. In the chat, we'll share some links to some helpful resources provided by Apple and by Monica Martinez, who is currently leading our Spanish language version of this session. The resources will help you further explore buttons on your iPad, as well as identify the icons you might notice at various times while using your iPad. Now that you are a bit more familiar with the iPad, it's time to get students logged into their CPS account through the web portal. This is important for tracking attendance and ensuring students have access to all learning materials. This step should be completed each day of remote learning. Students can use the Google Chrome browser in order to log into their CPS account. The icon for the Chrome browser is shown on my screen. After launching the Chrome browser, students will visit cps.edu/portal. If a student is a new user and needs to activate their account, they will click on the new user text located below the password field and sign-in buttons. Then they will need to enter their legal first name, their student ID number, and their birthday. A document that details this process will be available in the chat. Students with an active account can simply enter their CPS username and password. Students can reset their password using the Forgot Password text just above the password field. Now that students are both more familiar with the iPad and have logged into the CPS portal, it's time to begin utilizing Google Apps for Education. Google Apps for Education is a set of free Google Apps designed for educational use. The hub of that learning and communication is Google Classroom. Google Classroom will likely be used daily for accessing classwork and communicating with teachers. If there are students in your household utilizing a Chromebook rather than an iPad, you might notice some differences between Google Classroom on those devices. Items may be in different locations, but all features are still available to students utilizing iPads. Students will launch the Google Classroom app. The icon for that app is shown on my screen. The first time a student launches this app, they will click the Get Started button. Then, students will be prompted to sign into their Google account using their CPS credentials. Once students are logged into their Google Classroom, they will see classes they have been enrolled in or any invitations to join classes. If a student needs to join a class, they will see a white Join button or Accept button on the class tile. You can see an example of this in the first class shown in the image on my screen. Students can click that button to join the class. If no Accept button is present, students have already automatically been enrolled in the class. They simply need to click on that class in order to enter. Now, some students might have more than one class, while others will only see one class. If you have a question about this or you do not see the appropriate classes, please contact your student's teacher. Along those same lines, if you ever find that your child is missing classes suddenly or seeing the wrong classes in general, double check that they are logged into Google Classroom. They can check which account is logged in by clicking on the icon with their photo or initial. This icon is located at the top right corner of the screen. You can see in the animation, when this icon is selected, we are given the option to switch to a different Google account. Now let's talk about what you'll see in Google Classroom after students have clicked on a class. When students enter a class, they will land on the stream. The stream is used for announcements and other quick posts. Students should check the stream daily. If you look at the image on the screen, you'll notice other tabs across the bottom of the page. The text shown in blue is where the student is currently located. Students should select the Classwork tab to view any work that has been assigned to them. Students should check the Classwork tab every day as well. In the Classwork tab, you'll see assignments and other resources shared by the teacher. Under each item, you'll see a due date. In order to see a piece of classwork and complete it, students must simply click on the classwork. The large blue headings shown in the image on my screen are called topics. Teachers use topics to organize classwork. In order to complete a piece of classwork, students should click on that item. Once that item has been selected, this is what students will see. Let's zoom in on some important areas of this view of an assignment. At the top of the piece of classwork, students should look for a couple important items. First of all, we're looking for directions. These will explain how the students should go about completing the work. Secondly, the teacher might have attached a document for the students. Here we see the teacher has attached a video for the student to watch. If I were to click on that video, it would automatically open that video in YouTube. At the very bottom of the piece of classwork, students should look for one very important area. This is labeled Your Work. This is where students will submit work or indicate they have completed an assignment. If students do not see this area, this is not an assignment, but simply a material or a resource shared by the teacher. So again, if we are not noticing your work, there is no work to be done. We are simply viewing a resource. Now, on this assignment, our instructions say that we need to mark the assignment as done. But you'll notice I'm not seeing that option on my screen. Students must click on the Your Work area to have that area expand. Then we will see a button that allows us to mark the assignment as done. Let me show you what that looks like. Here we have selected the Your Work area, and now you can see the Mark as Done button. Sometimes, however, teachers will attach documents for students to interact with. Let's see how that differs than this assignment, where students were simply asked to watch a video and indicate they had completed that process. This time, when students click on Your Work, they see a document. You'll notice this time our button says Turn In as opposed to Mark as Done. This indicates that the student must actually turn something in rather than just indicate they have completed it. If a document is attached, the student will need to click on the document. In the example shown on my screen, the attached document is a Google Doc. Let's see what happens when we open that Google Doc. When we first open the Google Doc, it loads as a preview. How do we know this is simply a preview? We see the arrow icon indicated at the top right. This means we are able to launch the file in its own app. Let's zoom in on that part of the screen. Here, you will also notice a pencil icon. If a student clicks on the pencil, they are able to write on that document. However, no one but the student will see these annotations. They are only on the student preview. This is not how a student should go about completing their classwork. Instead, they should click the launch icon at the top right. This will open the document in the appropriate app. All apps needed should be preloaded on the iPad. We'll talk more about these apps in a bit. You can see in the image, when the launch icon is selected, the document will load in the correct app, which is Google Docs. Here, the student should complete work as instructed by the teacher. Again, this is the appropriate view for completing the work. We are no longer seeing the option to launch in another app, so we know we are in the correct location. Now, after that application has launched, students might find that they can't edit the document. They might click on an area of their screen where they are asked to type, but they find they are unable to type. Here, you will notice a second pencil at the bottom right corner. Let's zoom in on that. And this time, that pencil is in a small circle, again at the bottom right. This time, students should select this pencil to make edits and complete their work. Again, we avoid the first pencil, but choose the one in the circle. Once students have completed their work, they might find it a bit difficult to get back to the turn-in button of Google Classroom. Remember, they can double press the home screen to easily switch back to Google Classroom. From here, if they are still seeing that preview of the assignment, they can use the X at the top left to close the preview. Again, we are in the application. A double click shows us previously opened apps, and we can use the X at the top left to close the preview. Now, the student will be back at their assignment in Google Classroom. They will click the Turn In button to submit their work. Here, you will also notice students have the option to private message their teacher if they have a question about the assignment. After students are finished on this page, they can use the arrow at the top of the screen to swipe down. If you find that you need a quick and easy way to identify what work your student has and has not completed, click on the 3 lines at the top left corner of the screen to reveal a menu. Let's zoom in on that menu. Again, clicking on the 3 lines at the top left will display a menu. This menu allows students to navigate from class to class as well. Once in this menu, select To Do. The to-do list allows you to see work that has been assigned, is missing, and is done. So again, here we are seeing all work across multiple classes that students must complete or have completed. The other primary platform for remote learning is Meet. This is a video conferencing platform, and while it is a standalone app, it is now also integrated with Classroom. Teachers might instruct students to go to Classroom to join the Meet. If so, they will navigate to that class in Classroom first. There, they will see a camera icon at the top right corner. Clicking there will launch the Meet app and allow students to enter the Meet. If you are familiar with entering a Meet through Classroom on another type of device, like a Chromebook, you will notice this icon is in a different location. On a Chromebook, this link will be underneath the banner at the top of the screen or at the top of the classwork page. But again, on the iPad, we are looking for the camera icon at the top right. Teachers might ask students to utilize other Google Apps for education, such as Docs, Drive, and Gmail. These apps should be preloaded on the iPad. Students will need to log into these apps using their CPS account. I will give you a brief overview of some of these apps in case your student is asked to use them. Docs is Google's word processor. Here, students can type information. It's also collaborative, meaning a teacher might ask that multiple students work on the same doc at once. As with all things Google, changes made to a doc are automatically saved, so you won't find a save button here. Slides is Google's presentation platform. Here, students can build presentation. Teachers often use slides for other purposes as well, like matching activities and digital worksheets. Again, there is no need to save when using this platform either. CPS might have installed other apps on the iPad for students to use. These are some examples of other Google apps that you might notice on your student's device. I know we've talked about several apps, but remember, most things your students are asked to do will originate in Google Classroom. I know that was a lot of information and you might be feeling a bit overwhelmed or curious about where you can get help should questions arise throughout the remote learning experience. The great news is there are so many resources available to CPS students and families if you find you need additional support. CPS has a new website specifically to help support families during remote learning. This site will provide you with resources and contact information should you or your students encounter difficulties. We will add that link to the chat and on the screen. CPS also has a hotline just for guardians available Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. The support is available both in English and Spanish, and we highly recommend you jot down this number, take a picture of it, or add it to your phone contacts for easy access. That number is 773-417-1060. Now, I know that was a lot to cover in a short amount of time, but again, we are so glad you could join us today. Hopefully you feel a bit more well-equipped to help your student learn and grow with an iPad. If you've got questions, continue to add them to our chat, and we will turn our attention over there in just a minute. But before we shift gears for Q&A, I want to thank you once again for learning and growing with us. The Chicago Public School team is here to help, and there are some amazing resources and support systems from the Family and Community Educator Training Team. Google for Education has been so generous in providing this opportunity to share. We hope that you stick around for some question and answer time with our experts, but just a reminder that this session was recorded and we will be posting the video soon. Be sure to share and keep those lines of communication open so we can all learn from one another. At this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen as we shift to try to answer more of your questions. Lisa and Marlene are going to hop back on the screen with me. And were there any items in the chat that you noticed that we need to discuss today?
We had a pretty quiet group today. Lots of links shared in that chat, so definitely look back at those. But I didn't see any questions come through for you, Amy.
All right. Well, again, we truly appreciate you being with us today. I'm so happy that you took the time to learn and grow with us. And again, feel free to revisit this presentation at any time should you need further assistance. Thank you all.